now. I'm just setting up the record. So again, that might be a reason why you might not want to have your video on. So I will put that disclaimer in now that we will be screen recording the presentation too, so that we can upload to YouTube. But yeah, first and foremost, as I said already to those that joined at 5, is a massive thanks to all of you joining this evening. Again, we're going to talk about the trial games that we've got coming as of next week, but we just thought this would be a great opportunity heading into those trials to have some time online with you guys to give an interactive presentation and seminar telling you a bit more about us as a company for those of you that don't know, and for those that you do already know, it would be a good refresh, and then also running through the process of how you go from sitting here today listening to our seminar to then going out to America on a scholarship. That being said, I'm not great with technology, so I'll again put that caveat out there, but I'm just going to screen share now. Okay, so what I shall do, okay, do message me if you can't see the screen, but I'm hoping the fact that nobody has said anything that you can see the screen all good. So let me just change the view on that. No, that's not what I want. You'd have thought, given that we've done quite a few during lockdown, I would have figured all this out, but... Okay, cool. So I think you should all be able to see the slide that I'm on, so it'd help if I went to the beginning. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to get straight into the presentation. As I said, anybody who has any questions throughout, please just do message in, and my colleague will notify me when they come in. And then also, please, again, to my colleague, notify me any other people that join in. So the purpose of this evening, as I said, going into the trial games next week, is to, what we would usually do on a typical trial game is an hour before the scheduled game for the trial event is we would deliver essentially this presentation. So obviously thankful for technology in these conditions to be able to deliver that, and then answer questions before then going on to do a full officiated game in front of us where we can video record and get high quality footage, but then also obviously get to see you play or your child play firsthand in person. So obviously still really looking forward to the events that we've got coming up next week. Now, my colleagues in marketing also like this slide because it's an opportunity to push the social media channels, but in all honesty, there is a huge amount of value in that right now more than ever because there are so many updates. Most of them positive, unfortunately, with the cancellation, the Sheffield trial, some of them negative as well, but particularly on Instagram and Twitter is great for the most recent updates and everything that's going on. So that being said, yeah, so this will be about 60, 70 minutes of telling you a bit more about us as a company, running through the process. And then also worth mentioning is I will be here for kind of the next hour once we've finished as well. So if anyone feels that then, you know, don't want to answer a question at this stage, we've got an hour afterwards where welcome any questions that you have. Okay, so where else to start but with the impact of COVID and first and foremost on actually our trial event. So as I said, it was a really tough decision, and apologies for the confusion in that we messaged you when we first heard the news about Tier 3 status in Sheffield and said that the event would still be going ahead. We were assured by our partners at Football Industry College and St George's Park Graves in Sheffield that the venue would be absolutely fine in terms of holding the event. What we also then got and checked up with players in the days following that was that a lot of families didn't feel comfortable travelling to an area of Tier 3 status, which we completely appreciate and also understand. I'm just trying to check, I think that might be an appointment, is that we totally get it. So it's not that the event is cancelled, it's more that it's postponed and will be rescheduled. We just want to make sure that if these events do go ahead, that you know, we've got as many athletes and parents there as possible to showcase their skill to make the most of the event, but also that everyone there feels completely comfortable with that event. Now, I mentioned to you guys before I came onto the call was that there is kind of a compromise for tomorrow in that as a team, obviously we've still got tomorrow reserved because we were going to be spending it at the trial, is that for those that play for Football Industry College, which is where we're hosting the event, we have video footage from your recent games. So we're going to be able to review that tomorrow. So particularly those who are looking to go out to America next year, so you second years, we will still be able to review your performance the same as if we were to go tomorrow. And then also you should have received an email today with a Calendly invite, where if you want to have an individual meeting with myself or one of my colleagues, you can book those at half-an-hour slots for tomorrow. So although obviously not the same as good as, you know, if we were to hold the trial, at least we're able to review you. And if you're not part of Football Industry College, but you have video footage that you haven't already shared with us, please do so. And then we can still have that meeting part of it. Now, beyond Sheffield, we've got the trial on the Tuesday at Lowestoft, which is at Barnard's Meadow, again with our partners, Football Industry College and Lowestoft Town. That is still going ahead. Obviously, the main reason for that is that the rates of COVID are a lot lower, and therefore it is not in the same tier status as Sheffield. And again, for those of you that are looking to attend our women's soccer trial next Friday at AFC Sudbury, that's a typo there. It's not in Sheffield, so don't worry, it is in Suffolk. That one on Friday is also going ahead. You should have already received an email with information about this from either myself or my colleagues with the full details for that. But again, any questions, you've got my email, my colleague's email, or my phone number. Feel free to ask any questions. At this stage, I'm just going to quickly check that nobody else is looking to join. Yep, there are some people waiting. So lucky I joined there. Okay, so for those of you that just entered the seminar, you haven't missed too much. Literally all we're doing at the moment is going through the fact that obviously the Sheffield trial has been postponed, but tomorrow we will be reviewing video footage. For those who are at Football Industry College, we've already got that footage, but for those of you that are not, please do share any footage that we have. If not, we'll be rescheduling that for next month. The men's soccer trial in Lowestoft and the women's in Sudbury and Suffolk next week, Tuesday and Friday, will still be going ahead. Okay, so that's a bit of admin out of the way. Now let's get into the good stuff, which is, well, still impact of COVID, but more relating to college sports. Now, on a positive note, European students can now travel to America on their F1 visa. For those of you that weren't aware, you know, going back to like June, July time, this still wasn't feasible. So we had a lot of athletes either stuck in America who weren't able to come home during the summer break, or were in the UK unable to get back out there. As you can imagine, there was a huge backlog. And sorry, for those of you coming in, if you can just mute yourself as you do come in, just so there's no interference, that would be great. Okay, cool. So yeah, for those of you, those that were looking to go out to the States, they were unable to. However, Donald Trump then came out and said that if your college or university isn't holding full-time classes, so if majority or at least half of the classes were online, you then actually lose your F1 student status, which would mean you'd need to leave the country. As you can imagine, that was not well received by all universities, particularly the large ones who rely heavily on international students and scholarship for the running of the unis. So, you know, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, a lot of also big tech companies such as Apple threatened to sue the US government. So that decision got U-turned, which was obviously a massive positive. Since then, the US Embassy in London has opened and started reprocessing student visas, and all of our athletes that were looking to go out for this fall have successfully done so. Now, another impact of COVID, as you can imagine, for example, with soccer, is it's a full sport. So it typically takes place between around August and November time each year is when you're in season. Now, that just wasn't able to happen. So initially, they were giving it time to see how each regulatory body and division wanted to handle it. But it just got to the point as we got closer and closer to the start of the season that it wasn't looking like it was going to be feasible. Now, some universities have still played games during this fall season, almost like friendlies. And also they have postponed the season and they're looking to take place in January 2021. Now, you're probably thinking, right, okay, what impact does that have on me? So for those of you looking to go out next year, there is going to be an impact to a certain degree, because if I'm a senior, so I'm in my last year before I graduate, and I was thinking, well, I don't want to miss out on my last season. So rather than doing it in the fall, I'm going to do it in the spring. They're still obviously part of that roster. Therefore, if I'm a coach and those players that I was going to graduate, I've still got, naturally that means I've got less of a need for recruitment. So if my star striker was going to graduate and I was going to look to bring someone in a bit sooner, obviously that's not going to be the case anymore. So therefore it could delay recruitment. Now, I'll get into the different regulatory bodies and divisions. So first of all, apologies if you're already familiar with them, but for those who aren't, don't worry, I'm not going to test you. And there is, it can be confusing at times, but community colleges, which are 2-year institutions, they play under what's called the NJCAA. Now, the NJCAA have also come out this week and said that they are also not going to deduct any eligibility for players that play in this semester or in the spring semester. So what you might find is people actually might take 3 seasons or 3 years at a community college rather than 2, because they're not going to lose their eligibility status. So they're kind of the major knock-on effects, is that the season's going to take place. I had a conversation with someone earlier where we were discussing how for years there's been talk about maybe making soccer an all year round sport. So you'd have it in both fall and spring semesters. I think on the back end of this, where they've done a spring and full year round, is that it might be the perfect time for them to move to that model as well. The other thing that is worth mentioning, the last thing on this slide, as you can see, is regarding to entrance exams and College Board. So College Board administer the SAT. There's also the ACT as well. So what they've said for next year is, because there's been so many test centres cancelled this year, is that it would be really unfair to obviously make a player have to have scored a certain score on those entrance exams if they haven't had a chance to take it. Now, what we've been recommending to our athletes who can take it is still to do so, because even though you might not need it to be eligible to play, that doesn't mean that schools where you could potentially get academic scholarship based on your entrance exam score are going to waiver that. So kind of the key message there is, if you're looking to go out next year and you're thinking and worrying, oh, I need to do the SAT, I need to study for it, I need to get it done, the next test centre date for the SAT, for example, is in December. That's pretty much full up already, and the next one won't be till March. So obviously, if it was a normal year, you would therefore be concerned about getting it done. But it's just to say that for many schools, it's not going to be required anyway. So the positive of that is, if you're coming into this process now, that's one major obstacle that you might not have to worry about. It's also worth mentioning, at a community college, which is NJCAA, you don't have to take an entrance exam anyways, regardless. That being said, I've talked about a lot of different acronyms there and don't want to confuse you anymore, so I'll get back to that in a minute. So why go to America on a sports scholarship? Or some people under the Trump administration might be saying, why do I want to go to America anyway? But we won't be getting into politics tonight. But in all seriousness, it's obviously an unbelievable opportunity to carry on playing soccer at an incredibly high level that can even lead to professional routes, and also use your talent and your ability at football to potentially, get a degree and come out completely debt-free, which for me, that was my experience and situation. Now, for those of you that don't realise the scale of American sports in America, is that there's over 4,500 colleges and universities that offer degrees. So what we find, particularly for our athletes that maybe have been at pro clubs or as scholars, is that they may get contacted out of the blue by a university and, they've shown a bit of interest in that player, is that there are thousands of universities. So if your local uni, contacted you and said, look, we'd like to offer you a place, you wouldn't just take that straight off the bat because it's the first one that showed interest. And the key thing for us is making sure that we place a player at a school that's right for them academically, athletically, financially, and then all other elements that come into it, such as preferences with location, flight travel, how easy it is to access, what other neighbouring states there are, and what the potential opportunities are at the end of the 4 years. So there's so many different factors, and there's thousands of schools, but obviously ultimately we just need to end up at the right school that's right for you as a player, but also you as a family as well. Now, an interesting stat there, so over 600 unis offered international athletes over $20,000 in scholarship last year. So as you can imagine, it's really big business. And also there, over 95% of athletes in America on a scholarship are paying less for university than if they went to uni in the UK. So as you can imagine, financially, it's a hugely lucrative and, money-saving opportunity. But for me personally, yes, it was great that I was able to live in Chicago for 4 years and come out completely debt-free. But parents might argue differently. But from a player's perspective, it's everything else that I got that experience that was amazing. So the opportunity to live in Chicago for 4 years and go to over 20 states in 4 years and play in an incredibly professional environment where games are on ESPN and you playing in front of thousands. And, you know, for me as well, like the nutrition side, strength and conditioning, being in optimal fitness, as well as getting a degree, was just a complete no-brainer for me. So I'm sure all of you who are listening tonight realize how big college sports are in America. You've only got to go onto YouTube and watch what it's like at one of the American football college games or spring break or anything with the campus tours. And that, again, that's another major positive of this whole situation, is that many universities that maybe never had online campus tours, is there are so many now because they haven't been able to do their kind of open events, is, you know, go on YouTube, do some research, try and find schools on there. You'll be able to see firsthand just how big American sports are, and also how incredible the universities that you could study at are as well. So I've already put that there, studying some of the world's greatest cities. I'd never been to America before, moving there, and then the opportunity, as I said, to live in Chicago for 4 years, to, you know, go to over 20 states was incredible for me. And I know it sounds really cheesy, and you talk about it like Disney, like the magic of that experience, but it really is. Like, there's nothing that kind of compares to it. And I've got a lot of friends, or, you know, my sibling went to university in the UK, is that just nothing kind of compares to it's almost like America with everything's bigger and better, but, you know, the scale of it, the campus community, going to college games, it's just like nothing I'd ever imagined. And I had, you know, albeit many years ago, there were some videos online, and even what I expected it to be like, it was 10 times more impressive when I was actually out there. And then looping back to the finances again, I was able to come out of this whole experience completely debt-free, whereas my sister, who went to UCL in London, was paying off her debt for like the next 8 years. So financially, massive opportunity, although the caveat is there are going to be costs, and we'll get to that a little bit later on. That's obviously the fun bit as well. But as I said, albeit biased, it is an incredible opportunity, and also a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I know for a lot of you, I've already spoken to you individually, is that once you've been out of education longer than 12 months, you are going to start having eligibility issues. And we've had so many athletes who maybe we've offered a place on our program, haven't taken it, and then maybe we've seen them a year or 2 years later down the line, and they've said, oh, I really want to do it now, or I wish I would have done it. And unfortunately, it's just one of those ones where, oh, you've been out of education now 2-3 years, the chances of a coach taking you are very slim. So all of these things to take in consideration. Okay, so I touched on it a little bit earlier on, and looking at the different college divisions. Don't worry, again, I won't quiz you, but I'm sure actually a lot of you who are listening today will already be familiar with quite a few of these divisions. The other thing worth saying is, after the call this evening or tomorrow, I will send you over these slides. So feel free to take notes, but don't worry about, you know, knowing exactly the ins and outs. But hopefully the narrative tonight will help explain it. Now, when you're looking at 4-year universities, which is typical for America, whereas obviously in the UK it would be 3 with a gap year, you're looking at university colleges that fall under NCAA or NAIA. So you can see those on the screen. Now, with NCAA, there's 3 divisions. And the first thing and most important thing to say regarding any divisions is that you cannot get relegated or promoted based on how your men's or women's soccer do. Now, in fact, I was having that conversation this afternoon with a player, is that don't assume that because you know, their women's soccer is D1, that they're going to have a better women's soccer team than a university that's D2. Now, with D3, they cannot give athletic scholarship. As a result, as you can imagine, if I can't give any scholarship based on how good you are at football, naturally the teams aren't going to be as good. So if you want to, you know, make the assumption that D3 schools aren't as good as D2 or D1, then that's a fair assumption. But in terms of D2 and D1, yes, the top D1 programs in the country probably will have a lot of athletes that are going on to become professional or play for their country. However, there's some D1 programs that would lose to D2 programs, for example. So it's definitely worth coming into this process with an open mind. And that's not to say that I'm anti D1. You know, we look to find the right school for you regardless of regulatory body or division, but it's just worth remembering that a school does not have division status based on its women's soccer or men's soccer team. It's based on the size of the school, the number of subjects, teachers, faculty, facilities. And also worth mentioning that, you know, when you have got a bigger university with more facilities, well, guess what? There's no surprise when it costs more as well. So it wouldn't be unusual for a D1 program to be between $40,000 to $60,000 a year. And don't worry, that's without scholarship. Whereas it might be that D2 or other divisions would be slightly less than that. So therefore, if the total cost is less and you're able to get a good scholarship, then the overall costs are going to be lower as well. Now, in terms of the NCAA, it is the biggest out there. That's probably why a lot of you will have heard of it already. You can see there's over 1,200 colleges just within the NCAA, over 24 sports, and almost 500,000 athletes playing within those 24 sports. Now, again, with the scholarships, so there's a lot more athletes. So if you're looking at the football side of things, a D1 program might even have a first team and a reserves team. So it's called a varsity team and a junior varsity. So there might be 60 players. So for example, if I'm a goalkeeper, it might be there's 3 goalkeepers there already. So, you know, the chances of me playing in my first year might be really slim because 2 of those goalkeepers might be seniors and it's the last year they can play. So all these kind of differences between the universities we need to take into consideration when finding the right fit for you, because I know me personally, I wouldn't want to go to a school where, okay, I might be the number 1 goalkeeper, I might play in year 2, 3, 4, but do I really want to go out to America, a different country, a new experience, and be sitting on the bench for a year, no matter how well I do? So that's not to say that's always the case, but again, it's just helping giving you some insight about these different divisions. Now, again, each coach can attribute a scholarship to their roster. And if I'm a coach and I'm able to give 10 scholarship amounts, so full athletic scholarship amounts across my squad, I might want to give a third of it to all 30, which is unlikely. I might want to give my 10 best players full athletic scholarships. It's kind of up to my discretion how I want to split up the athletic scholarship. The academic side of it, you typically qualify for. So here are your GCSEs or A-levels or BTECs. This is your grade point average. This is your entrance exam score. Sorry, talking too much. Whatever that qualifies for is your academic package, and then the coach can obviously dictate the athletic. But there's also an element of luck to that, because if I'm graduating 2 goalkeepers this year, I might have loads of scholarship to give. If I'm only graduating 1, I might have less. So it depends how many they're graduating as well, which, looping back to the impact of COVID, is why there might be slightly few scholarships available because less players are graduating at the same time. Grade point average is GPA, and our real simplistic is if you get an A or a 9 in the UK, that would equate to a 4 in the US system. If I was to get a B, a 3, a C, a 2, a D, a 1. It's not that straightforward, but just to get your mind around it, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, that's the most simple way to think of it. Now, to graduate and complete your degree, you need to average a C. C's get degrees, so you're talking a 2.0 is what you want to get. As you can see, NCAA requires slightly above a C in order to be eligible. NAIA is a C. But again, don't worry about that too much. If you're on the call right now and you're thinking, oh, well, I haven't even got C's, don't worry, because A, it's not as simplistic kind of translating English grades to America as that. And also, we're now going to talk about community college routes as well. With the SAT and ACT, again, I don't want to bore you about entrance exams on a Sunday night, but with the NCAA, which again doesn't make sense to me, is the better your grades you've got at high school, the lower score you can get on the entrance exam to make yourself eligible, which again doesn't make sense to me, because surely if you're really smart, then it's going to be easier to get a higher score. The NAIA, which I'll get to next, as you can see, it's 970 for the SAT or 18 on the ACT. ACT out of 31, and then the SATs out of 1600 for English and maths. So it's not that you're having to score 90%, it's around 55% in order to be eligible. What you'll see here, let me just move that for you. this is something that we've added recently since we did our last seminar. It's talking about the eligibility centres. The purpose of them is to prove that you've never been a professional and that you haven't been out of education longer than 12 months, like I mentioned. Now, the NCAA handles all of that process for you. And again, I won't go into too much detail, but that can take months to get cleared, but is a key part so that the NCAA can say, look, here's this player. They are fully eligible. They've got 4 years to play their 4 seasons. Now, INCRED, which I'll get to, relates to both the NAIA and NJCAA. So nice segue into the NAIA is that is another regulatory body for 4-year universities and colleges. I myself played at an NAIA school called the Illinois Institute of Technology, which is A, a mouthful, and B, you'd have never heard of. I'm sure of that. Now, there's over 250 schools within the NAIA conferences, over 14 sports, over 60,000 athletes. Now, as you can see, smaller than the NCAA, but actually the scholarships, if you look at it from a mathematic and statistic point of view, there is more opportunity to get higher scholarships. And it's just as competitive. If you were talking real broadly speaking, again, going back to NCAA D1, the top teams may be the best, but the rest of NCAA D1 and D2 is very comparable to that of NAIA. So to put that into perspective, and I'll bore you about my experiences a little bit, but I was a scholar at Ipswich Town, used to be decent at football, but then they're not so great anymore. But I was a scholar at Ipswich, and you know, there was 12 other scholars on our team at NAIA. So it was incredibly, you know, a very high level that we were playing at. And we'd often play NCAA D1 and D2 programs out of season and beat them as well. So again, important to go into the process with an open mind. And yeah, I'll talk about INCRED after. So I've talked about the 4-year schools. So just to recap, you've got NCAA D1, D2, D3, and NAIA. D3 do not give athletic scholarships, so therefore it's pretty highly unlikely that you're not going to go to one of those schools unless you're like a straight A student with an extremely high entrance exam score. You might be in a position to get an incredibly high academic scholarship. NAIA, one main regulatory body, over 250 schools, typically in smaller locations in America. But again, so if you're looking at the financial opportunities, the rosters might be only 15 to 18, yet they've still got 10 athletic scholarships to give. And that was the situation for me at my school, was there was about 10 of us on full academic athletic scholarships. And therefore, obviously, financially, it was great. So I was able to come out completely debt-free. Now, for those of you that are listening this evening and maybe thinking, yeah, you know, I'm good at football, but actually, you know, academics aren't my strongest, is that NJCAA is those 2-year community college schools. Now, a lot of people, again, might be under the impression that, oh, well, I don't want to go to community college. But, you know, there's a lot of benefits to going through a community college. It's not for everyone, but if your academics aren't that good, it gives you an opportunity to go into an environment that's not going to be too challenging from an academic standpoint. Also an opportunity to get your grades up so that after those 2 years, we can help transfer you to a 4-year school, so NCAA or NAIA. And therefore, you'll have proven yourself at college level for 2 years. So, you know, if you're doing well, you're going to get picked up and you might get a really big scholarship going into your last 2 years. The degree that you end up getting at the end of the 4 years is where you finish, not where you started. And as you can imagine, the same if you compared an actual college in the UK compared to a university, although it is still regarded, you know, colleges and universities synonymous out there, it's going to be a lot cheaper. So as I said at the beginning, a D1 program might be like $40,000 to $60,000 a year without scholarship. It wouldn't be unusual for an NJCAA to be $10,000 a year without scholarship. So when you factor scholarship in as well, as you can imagine, it could become, you know, really financially feasible. There are over 500 schools within the NJCAA. You know, 27 sports, almost comparable to the NAIA, you know, with over 50,000 athletes. There are over 40,000 scholarship opportunities. Now, I've mentioned INCRED already. The reason why I mentioned this is relating to the eligibility centre is that NAIA and NJCAA are partnered with INCRED. In fact, it's kind of part of their organisation. If you want to get cleared by NAIA and NJCAA, rather than having to send official copies of your qualifications, hard copies that you have to get the school to sign. It can be really not a fun process. Is you can literally just upload photocopies of your own qualifications to it, and you can get cleared by Incred and get cleared by either the NAA or NJCAA. So it's a money saving and time saving process. I'm not on commission, by the way. It is a really time consuming process getting cleared by the eligibility centre. So something like Incred can really help. So just to recap on that last bit before we move on: NAIA, 4-year school; NCAA, NJCAA, for those that maybe aren't the most academic, doesn't mean that the football isn't as good. You could go there for 2 years. Typically costs are going to be cheaper. Raise your profile by playing at a decent college, and then obviously we can help you with that transfer process. That being said, just got one more getting admitted now. I shall move on to entrance exams. I've already talked about this probably too much. I realise it is not a fun topic, but it's one that needs to be addressed. If you are looking to go to a 4-year school, so NCAA or NAIA, in a normal year, as I said, it has been waived by most schools for 2021, is you would need to sit either the SAT or ACT. If you're coming into this process now and you're looking to go out next year, as I said, December is already pretty much full up because of the backlog. So this might not impact you at all. You just might not do the entrance exam. For those of you that are looking to go 2022, or I think we've even got someone here for 2023, the likelihood is that, unfortunately for you, they're going to reinstate it, so you would need to do it. I'll talk about the support that we provide with the entrance exams in a little bit. As you can see, lucky you, almost 4-hour exam, English, maths and critical thinking. Yeah, I did not enjoy doing it, I'm not going to lie, but it's just not much fun. Also, it's getting used to that standardized version of exams, because again, looking back, I thought, well, I know how to do English and maths, I've been doing it at school, but it's getting used to doing an American standardized exam. And also what you've got to remember is, if you're an American, you'll have been doing these exams for years leading up to it. So even if you're coming in a year before, you might have 6 months to revise. It's still quite a tall ask to get where you need to be. But again, going back to what you need to score, as long as you score roughly above a 970 out of 1600, you should be eligible at any school. Now, if you do particularly well, so for athletes that get over like 1200, it can actually open up opportunities for academic scholarship. So that's why it's an important part of the process, but also why we provide the support, because it could end up reducing your costs. We had a player last year who, I think she got like 1200 out of 1600. The school came back that she was going to and said, look, I know it's a pain, but if you retake it and get above a 1250, we can give you $2,000 a year extra academic scholarship. She did not want to do it, but mum and dad said, you are doing it. She did get the score that she needed, thankfully. So that meant, she's just reduced her cost by $8,000 over the 4 years. So it can be a really important part of that. Again, don't want to scare you too much, so I'll move on from that, but it is an important part of it. Now, in terms of us as a company, everyone that's on this call has already applied. Therefore, I know everyone will have been on the website, hopefully taken a look around that, or maybe even met with myself or one of my colleagues before. Therefore, we'll be familiar with the company. But just to kind of give you a brief overview, to make sure that you are on the right seminar and call, we are a sports recruitment specialist company. We did start just as soccer, so we were US soccer scholarships for 5 years, and then branched out to other sports as well when we got in people that had been on respective sports scholarships for those sports. So we're one of the longest staying in the industry. We've been going for almost 10 years now, helping athletes get out to America. The thing that differentiates us from literally every organisation out there that does this is kind of the personal level of support that we provide. And I'll kind of tell you about almost my horror experience using another company, ironically, back when I went through the process. But, we work with over 2,500 universities that give soccer scholarship, given universities. We've secured over $20 million in scholarship funding for our athletes during that time, successfully placed over 600 athletes. And what started with a company, me and 2 of my colleagues, who had both, all 3 of us had bad experiences using companies like ours, but luckily that didn't operate like we do, is that, we've grown to over 50 members of staff throughout England, UK, Dubai, Ireland, and America. So, and the reason why we've been able to grow it is by offering, personal service for our players and growing it organically. So we're experienced in the sense that, definitely not via Zoom, but back in the day, I would have been sitting there, as were my colleagues, talking, listening to someone about the opportunity of going out to America. and we've done it ourselves. So we're connected in the sense that, yes, when we started 10 years ago, I was having to contact coaches and introduce our players. But, because we're one of the longest, established in the industry, it's not unusual for a coach pretty much on a daily basis ring us up and say, look, Liam, I'm looking for a right back next year. I've got this amount of scholarship to play with. Who do you think would be a good fit? And we're very selective with how we work, so therefore we only sign the best student athletes. Is that we get a reputation for sending the best as well, so that works in everyone's favour. And then, as I said, the big thing for us is offering that personal service. So when I went through the process myself, I was one of over 300 athletes, and I didn't have an account manager, wouldn't be able to tell you the name of the person who signed me. My video got circulated, and then I never heard from them again. So my experience was not good at all. So the way that we've set up US Sports Scholarship is to give the service that we would have wanted ourselves, having gone through the process. The stars there on the slide, we have got a Trustpilot page. Hopefully I've paid our athletes enough to put good reviews. But in all seriousness, the reason why we're so transparent is, we're confident. If you want to talk to any athletes that we've represented or their parents, feel free to do so, because, as I said, we offer the best service out there, and we're confident that that is the case, and that is backed up by our success stories with that. So any more information you need on that, please do let us know. Wow, I forgot that I had this slide on there. That was before I could grow a beard, and also worryingly, I think I look even more paler than I do now, despite the fact I was living in Chicago at the time. As I said, I'll tell you a little bit more about my experience, but won't bore you too much. But I was at Ipswich Town Academy from 9 until 19. The whole time, all I'm thinking is I'm going to be a pro, so probably didn't give academics the attention that I should have. Then all of a sudden I have 4 knee operations in 2 years, and I'm told that I need to retire. So for me, it was a really difficult experience, because I've gone from thinking I know what I want to do with my life, and that's all I've spent my life focusing on, to kind of having to rethink, well, what do I do now? So Ipswich were really supportive. So I did my coaching badges, did my B license, and as it says in there, I coached the academy for 2 years, which was great. And I had opportunities to do that full time. But then beyond that, I knew I wanted to go to university. And as I said at the beginning, I either wanted, my sister went to uni in the UK, and she got in a lot of debt, but also my mates who had gone to uni in the UK, when it came to football, it was more of a social thing than taken seriously. So yeah, okay, the nights out and everything else, the drinking culture that came with kind of UK university and UK sports, having been brought up in a professional environment at Ipswich, I didn't really want that. So when I heard about America, how serious it's taken, and I didn't really even understand how serious until I was out there, was a massive attraction for me. So as I said, flying to games, having your pre-match meals, all your kits put out, you've got your own gym, you're training twice a day. I mean, as I've said to some of you before, is I've done pre-season with Ipswich Town's first team, and that was, looking back, an absolute breeze compared to doing pre-season out in America, albeit the heat didn't help, but just the level of intensity and how fit you are, and the professionalism of it, again, having your games on ESPN, playing in front of thousands, for me, that was exactly what I wanted from the process. I played semi-pro for a year before I went out to America, and I kind of fell out of love with the game, particularly being a slow tool forward. All they want to seem to do is hit it up to your head. But again, traveling the country to play in front of his man and his dog, it just wasn't for me. So going out to America and playing out there really, restored my love for the game, and I wouldn't have changed it. 1 second. It's the best decision I ever made. In terms of stats, as you can see, I did fairly well. It's probably a reflection of how poor the goalkeeping was as opposed to how good I was, but scored quite a lot of goals, won a lot of awards, got All-American of the Year 2011 and 12 for the entire country, which was, a really proud moment for me. Got Player of the Year for our entire conference twice as well. Academically, someone who, again, neglected studies, didn't really concentrate on it, I actually ended up with a 4.0 grade point average. So going back to what we said earlier, that meant I got straight A's for the whole 4 years. So again, it can be a really life-changing experience, to the point where, I went on and got a master's degree as well. So here was someone who, I loved football, didn't really think about academics or my career beyond that. This experience, obviously running my own business, I got a business degree, I was able to get a degree all funded for, a master's degree all funded for. So it really set me up for the next step in my life. So yeah, I can't speak highly enough of that. going back to my negative experience with the company that we used, I don't even need to name and shame them because no surprise, they don't exist anymore. But my experience was I went to a trial, I signed up then, and also the trial was, it was like in a park. The weather was terrible. The standard was terrible. And that was the only video I had. You know, even at Ipswich, our games weren't filmed back then. And that's used to kind of represent me to coaches. So that done me a disjustice straight away. But then, as I said, after my profile was circulated, I got emails from about 40 coaches. Well, at the time, I'm thinking, well, this is brilliant. But, you know, if I asked you guys, oh, here's 40 schools, what do you think of them? I didn't have a clue which was good, which wasn't, which state was good, what the divisions meant. I didn't know anything about entrance exams. It was just a complete nightmare for me. So as I said, the way that we operate, and I'll talk about it in a minute, is completely different to make sure that it's the smooth and stressless process as possible and that you end up at the right school for you. Okay, a few mugshots here. Ellie's unable to join us tonight, but will be at the women's trial on Friday. Some of you might be familiar or have spoken with her already. Real interesting story of Ellie is that we actually sent her out to America in 2015. So she was playing for Ipswich Women's. She went out to Davis and Elkins, which is an NCAA D2 program on a close to a full scholarship in West Virginia. Loved her time in there for 4 years, graduated, came back, re-signed for Ipswich. And again, that's the thing is, a lot of people think, well, I'm doing really well in the UK. I don't want to leave that. It will always be there for you. You know, if you're going at 18, 19, or even 20 like I did, you're coming back a better player with a degree at 20, 22, you know, 24. So it's only a good thing. And actually, Ellie's now helping the next generation because she now works and heads up our women's soccer as well. So again, hopefully it highlights that once somebody's signed up with us, you know, they're part of our family and we're there to support them, not only for the 4 years while they're in America, but also beyond graduation as well. Andy heads up our golf, Brett our rugby, but we're here to talk about football tonight, no other sports. For those of you, I know there's a few of you here tonight who are at EDSV Academy, who are one of our partners. Billy heads up our partnership there. Shane Supple, who used to play for Ireland and for Ipswich, heads up our academy in Dublin. Tommy Smith, currently of Colchester United, but actually played in Major League Soccer for Colorado Rapids, is an ambassador and works with us as well. And then again, I know a few of you are here from Football Industry College, and obviously Andy Reynolds heads up Football Industry College in Suffolk as well. So a few familiar faces there for you. In terms of our key partners, as I said, we work with all colleges and universities that give sports scholarships through the NCAA, NAIA, NJCAA. We also work with professional clubs. So if you're looking at the men's side, whether that's New York Red Bulls, Chicago Fire, Minnesota, we've got those partnerships in place. We've had players that have get drafted into Major League Soccer. One of our partners there, AFC Sudbury, they do a tour out to America each year, usually, obviously not this year. But again, the guys, we've got tickets for them to go see New York Red Bulls. Some of our athletes have gone and trialled at New York Red Bulls. So again, if your ambition is beyond the 4 years to be a professional, there is, you know, exit routes and we've got the connections there. I will also put the caveat in that, you know, it's just as hard to make it as a pro in America as it is in the UK. However, the advantage with the US system is if you're one of the best players at college, you're obviously going to get drafted because that's where the draft system works, where you go from college to play in the pro leagues. In terms of other partnerships, as I said, we work with a lot of pro clubs as well. I've listed some of the ones local to our trials coming up next week, but whether that's Ipswich, Colchester, Norwich, Cambridge, you know, we work with all the pro teams within the area as well. We've also got Global Sports Division, who are based in Cyprus. We've also got Invictus Academy, who are based in Dubai. So we've really got an international presence throughout. That being said, let me just check nobody has asked any questions yet or is entering. Okay, so again, I know that a lot of you are familiar with how we work in terms of our services, but the main package that we offer for our athletes, I didn't mention at the beginning, but the way that we're super selective is that we only sign 25 male, 25 female players per year on our program. The reason being, going back to what I said initially, was when I was one of 300, you're very much just a number in the process. There's no personal support, no personal care. As I said, I was done a disjustice throughout, and I'll get to that again a little bit later on. So we get over 5,000 applications a year for soccer, so we can be super selective with that. And also it just works really well for us because not only we're able to offer the best service, but we're able to sign the best student athletes as well. So it works really well for us. Now, in terms of the services here that we offer that differentiate us. So first and foremost, if you're on the call today, you'll have got cleared by our eligibility assessment first and foremost. So we know that you're eligible from an academic standpoint, and we think you're either of the required standard or know it because we've seen you play. And obviously, for those of you who haven't, we've got the trial game next week, so that will give us, an opportunity to do so. We've already talked about those trial events. Now, let me just have a quick drink. For those of you post the trial game or after reviewing your footage, get offered a place on our cohort, you would be given a designated rep. So might be me, might be Ellie, might be one of our other colleagues within soccer. So what that would mean is from day one to when you go out to America to even when you graduate, that person is your point of contact. So we'd have a WhatsApp group with you and your parents so that we can have weekly touch points throughout. Again, this is nothing that I got when I went through the process. I don't even know, there wasn't a rep for me. And I'll get back to kind of other bits a bit later on. So you've got those touch points. We also create a Google Drive shared with you. So there's a questionnaire on there so we can help identify what type of school you're looking to go to. There's a spreadsheet so that any interest or offers that comes in. So some coaches will want to contact us directly and learn a bit more about you, but others, they might want to go directly to you and talk to you and then liaise back to us. If whether they come through us or you, we just want to have that visibility. So let us know. And then on that spreadsheet, we can tell you the location, the name of the school, the coach, how many internationals they've got, what the roster size is, what their record is, what our recommendation is, what the opportunities are there. So unlike me in my experience where I had 40 schools and I had no idea, we barely had internet, so I had to research everything. That spreadsheet is one place where it's all in there. And so you can invest your time in the right schools, and also you're not wasting any coach's time if it's not going to be a good fit for you. So as I said, thousands of schools, but we need to ultimately arrive at the right one for you. The second that somebody also signs up, I'll just skip forward and come back, is your online player profile is created. So to look at it here on the right, so for Jake, for example, who's at Georgetown out in America, is that you've got your highlight video. So as much as we've got these connections with thousands of coaches out there, obviously the highlight video is important, and even more so right now for those coaches who can't travel over and see you in person. So it's a really important first impression. As I said, when I went through the process, I had a trial game and that was it. So if I played badly, well, then it was tough. Whereas once somebody signed with us, we'll keep coming to film you until we're happy with that footage. Typically 5 to 10 minutes is enough highlights for that. If they then need a full game, we can supply it. And below there, as you can see, the screenshot is cut off, but there's all the background information about Jake from an athletic standpoint, also an academic. Going back to my experience again, they'd also put how much I can afford each year. So I'd said $8,000 a year. So there was no real surprise when there was no offers better, or most of them not leaving me better than $8,000 a year. Because if I'm a coach, I know Jake can afford 8. I'd be an idiot to offer him much better because I know what he can afford. So the way that we operate is we'd never disclose what your budget is on your profile. We go to bat for our athletes as if they can afford as little as possible towards that university. And yes, that means that we're having to have more conversations and negotiations, but why would you show your hand straight off the bat? Because it's going to, put you at a disservice. So it might take us more, to and fro-ing, but if we can save you $2,000, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 by not revealing what your budget is, then over the 4 years we might save you 15 to 20 grand straight off the bat. So because we sign that select cohort, we're able to do that personal service that is going to get you the best possible deal. Okay, let me just shoot back if I can. Okay, so we talked about the highlight video, we talked about the SAT exam already. There's also an online athletes area on our site, so let me skip to that. So this is the athletes area. This was introduced this year. And again, as well as having a designated rep, so say for example, it's me, you would have this athlete's login where it says, look, Liam, here's day one, and here's everything that you need to get done between now and going out to America as a checklist. But also, say for example, I want to know more about the entrance exam. I click it on the SAT, and as you can see on the right-hand side here, SAT exam, you've got practice videos, practice exams with answers. You can also get free tuition from one of our partners. So everything that you need is on there. I'll talk about our university database in a minute, but that's also pretty revolutionary for the industry. In fact, let me just go back. I might talk. I know I will come back to that. So you've got the SAT support there, also the same with the eligibility centre. And then the best way to think of us is as a football agent, because we're contacting, you know, hundreds of schools and negotiating with them to get you the best possible outcome. Obviously, the key part of that as well is that you will also be having Zoom or Skype calls with those coaches, because as much as we can recommend a school and it might seem great on paper, until you've spoken to that coach or spoken to the other internationals on their roster, you won't truly know if it's a good fit for you. Then obviously once we've decided what school you want to go to, not right now because of COVID, but leading up to the last few years, a lot of our athletes, say they whittle it down to 2 or 3 schools, they might then fly out to America, visit all 3 in a week, and then make their decision. We unfortunately will not pay for your flights. However, you know, we'll help facilitate those visits as well. And then kind of after that, it's the same as if you were to go to any university, you know, even in the UK, you need to get cleared by admissions to get your visa. You need to sort, and then that obviously gives you a document which is called an I-20, so you can book your visa appointment. So going back to me talking about the UK, the US Embassy in the UK in London, is that where you can then get your visa. Health insurance, so obviously the NHS has been doing amazingly throughout the last few months, well, just in general anyway, but something that you don't really appreciate until you're somewhere like America where they haven't got a national health system. So insurance can be super expensive if you're not covered from a health perspective. And again, I won't go into too much detail because I'm sure that's not what you came on here to listen to about health insurance, but it's just worth mentioning that if you're not covered comprehensively by your school, although most schools are, we have partners that can help with that. And then the big thing is support while you're out there. A lot of companies will, okay, they might place you at a school and then it's very much their job's done, so they don't really care, and you won't hear from them for 4 years. If you get on and graduate, then happy days. And if you don't, it doesn't bother them. We are not of that mentality at all. The work doesn't stop when you go out to America, and arguably it only really starts, because we need to make sure that you're happy at that school for, if it's 2 years at a community colleges and then another 2 years at a uni, or 4 years at a uni in general. We need to make sure you're happy, but also, you know, your circumstances might change. If, for example, I did fairly well after year 1, I was getting interest and offers from other schools where it would cost me nothing. I wanted to explore those options. But again, the company were like, oh, you have to pay us again for that. So I said, well, just give me the video footage. I'll do it myself. Oh, well, we own the video footage, so you'd have to pay for that anyway. So it was clear to me, I was very much a number in the process, and it was just a money-making thing for them. You know, we take a one-time fee for our services, and we're there for you throughout. And an example of that, which I'll get to actually a bit later on, is Matt Bentley, where we transfer players, whether it's in their 2nd year or 3rd year, not because they're not happy, but maybe they've got opportunities to get higher scholarship, or they think, well, beyond graduation, I want to do this type of job, and if I move to a specialist school, it might help me with that. We also offer payment plans. In fact, we've got a COVID plan in at the minute, so you can do our fee over installments. And then, as I said, the massive selling point for us, and feel free to talk to any athletes that we've ever sent to America, is we provide ongoing career support and, you know, touch base with them throughout to make sure that they're happy. Okay, just make sure no one else is joining super late, and appreciate that I'm almost, you know, I've gone over an hour already, but don't worry, we're well over halfway and we'll soon be done. Hopefully you're finding it beneficial, and any questions do ask. So the athletes area is essentially, the database, sorry, is for coaches. As you can see on the left, they can search by sport, gender, position, the status, what you want to study, and essentially that will bring through the players for them. They click through, like on Jake's profile, and then they can either contact Jake directly or obviously notify us of that. Now, beyond the online profile, what we also do, as I said, when we have that questionnaire and identify the schools, say, for example, there's 500 schools that loosely fit what you're looking to do in terms of athletics, academics, location, and finances, we would then circulate this profile to those schools by email and also following up with calls. Of those 500 at the top of the funnel, maybe only 100 are looking for players in your position. So therefore you're down to 100. Of those 100, maybe only 40 fit your criteria actually when you've reviewed it more finely. So then you're down to 40. And then of those 40, maybe only 20 have the financial needs to be able to match that budget and make an offer. Of those 20, you know, we've got the spreadsheet, we can have conversations with you after fully reviewing it, maybe 10 a really good match for you. So then you would then invest that time in those schools. So as you can see, even though you're starting at a pool of 4,500 unis, 2,500 soccer unis, you know, dropping it down to your preferences, then what could be a good fit? It's all about arriving at that one school that can tick all those boxes. So by taking that kind of methodical, slow approach to it means that we can make sure we end up at the right school for you. We talked about the athletes area already. And the online database, which I mentioned, I'm all over the place here, is essentially what our online package is. So that Premier Athlete package is what we've been offering for 10 years. The reason why we introduced an online package only is, as I said, we're getting over 5,000 applications, but we're only signing like 50 on the women's and men's soccer program each year, is to still give those athletes an opportunity and a way to go down the process, even if they're not one of our actual Premier athletes. So part of the full Premier package, but also what makes the online package, is this uni database. So you can search hundreds of universities and colleges on there, and that's going to keep ever growing as we look to add to it, because we only launched it earlier this year. So say, for example, I want to look, I don't know if I've put it in here, but I'll send you guys a video after. If I wanted to look at Albine University, I'd click on that. It would then open campus video, more information about the school, the location, the sports. In fact, you can even contact the coaches directly, although I wouldn't recommend it, because as you can imagine, coaches get inundated with hundreds, if not thousands, of emails and contacts regarding players all over the world every month. So the chances of them responding to a player saying, "Hello, I'm Liam, look at me, I'm a great player," probably fairly slim. Whereas obviously we've got those personal relationships and contacts at those universities. But it's a great resource to be able to research schools. Yes, you've got that thing called Google, but this is something that's very specific in one place that you can easily do. As I said, when I went through the process looking at 40 schools, I would have loved a tool like that to be able to really learn more about the schools, because ultimately making a decision to commit to a school is a huge one, because you might be there for the next 4 years of your life. So the online package is essentially access to that uni database that all our signed athletes get. And also we would, if I just go back one, we also would create your profile for you. However, we wouldn't actively promote you. We wouldn't help with the negotiations, the SAT, the eligibility centre. There's no level of support beyond that. So as you can see, the main focus and what we're looking at is that Premier service package, but the online package does give an opportunity for athletes that maybe don't meet our criteria as well. Okay, so why use a company like us? Well, hopefully in the last hour and 16 minutes, you'll have seen that this process can be quite complex, but also there's a lot of universities, there's varying different scholarships, there's a lot to the process in terms of entrance exams, eligibility centres, finding the right school, getting the right package, is that, you know, we only offer 25 places on our program each year for men's soccer, women's soccer. We've been doing this for over 10 years. So, you know, one of the longest standing in the business. We've got 100% athlete success rate on placement for those looking to go out to America. We've secured over $20 million for our athletes during that time. Something that maybe some of you have heard before is this idea of a full scholarship. What that means is that my costs for tuition, food and housing are all covered. Brilliant. Doesn't everyone want that? Sign me up now. Now, the caveat to that is, do not come into this process thinking there aren't going to be any costs. Okay, if you're playing for England under 21s, just been released by Arsenal women's, and you're a straight A student, yes, you're going to get full scholarship offers. I got full scholarship offers, but actually I decided to go to a school that was 8,000 a year, because the ones that were offering me the packages didn't really fit my criteria in terms of academics, location, how good the football program was. So it can be misleading to talk about full scholarships. And as I said, about a quarter of our athletes still do get full scholarship offers. So that's great. But I think if you came into this process thinking, I'm going to live in Chicago and it's going to cost me nothing, then the reality is it's probably not going to be the case. But again, looping back to the initial slide, is that for over 95% of our athletes in America, they're paying significantly less than if they went to university in the UK. And again, averages can be misleading, but over 90% of athletes are paying under $10,000 a year for tuition, food, and housing, which I realise is still a significant amount, and it does vary. So we've got some athletes paying nothing, and some who are paying slightly above $10,000 a year. However, what I'll talk to you a little bit on in about 10 minutes is that you can work on campus with your student visa, so that can reduce your costs further. Also, the payment doesn't need to be made straight away. It can be paid in installments over the year. And also, if you look to go to university in the UK, if you totaled up tuition, which is obviously like over £9,000, and food and housing, you're actually looking over £20,000 a year on average. So significantly cheaper. For those that are paying above $10,000 a year, they may be at schools that are $60,000 a year, and therefore they've got a $50,000 scholarship. So again, the key thing here is about finding the right school for you academically, athletically, and financially. So, but yeah, hopefully that gives you a rough idea on costs. Trial games, obviously you guys already know that about, and we've talked about the athletes area and the uni database, and the fact that the key thing for us is not only supporting you before you go out to America, but also for the 4 years while you're out there. Obviously that all sounds amazing, but here's some more fun bits, which is guarantees. Obviously, and unfortunately, I can't sit here and say, look, Liam, I have watched your video and we've seen you play, I know your grades, and you're going to get X% scholarship from X amount of schools. And any company that says that, unfortunately, they're lying because they're not in a position to do so. The reason being is, you know, we're not the ones who are taking your exams and getting your grades. We're not doing your entrance exam, so obviously that's going to impact it. And ultimately, we're not the coach. So as much as I can say, look, Coach Seabolt, you know, I've got this athlete, really recommend them. You know, if he just doesn't think that's a good fit for him, he might not offer the amount of scholarship as another coach would. So hopefully you understand that we can't, you know, guarantee how many offers, what the scholarship amount will be, or the location of offers. However, you know, through our personal support, getting the video footage, the contacts we've got, the reputation we've got for sending best players, is we can, you know, give you the best support, give you the optimal profile circulation, and therefore give you the best chance of getting the best scholarship offers at the best possible schools. Okay, so I kind of touch on it as well, is that, you know, you as an athlete coming into this process, and something I definitely didn't really comprehend, was that there's still a lot to me to make this process work. So obviously what level of support you get from us, what academic grades. So, okay, maybe you've done your GCSE grades, so that's already done, but how much effort you put on your BTEC or your A level and what grades you get there can affect your grade point average, which could affect the academic scholarship that you qualify, which therefore could bring your whole package down. As I said, we will keep coming to film you, but it's obviously how you perform when you film as well. We've had athletes that have scored hat tricks when we've come and watched them, or we've had athletes who haven't played well. So, you know, it's important that don't be nervous when we do film you, because we'll keep coming to film you, but just express yourself and play as you would normally. The entrance exams, obviously you've got to study for them. And, you know, as much as I can recommend a school, ultimately the conversations you have with coaches and also international athletes, and even mum and dad can say, oh, I'd love to go to California, but that might not be your idea of the ideal experience. So ultimately it's what school you choose to go to as well. Again, I'm going to share these slides, so I won't go into too much detail, but it just gives you a really rough guide of where you need to be at in terms of each regulatory body and division, which kind of contradicts what I said earlier. But if you were looking top D1, they probably will be looking for you to have played at international level or be an academy scholar. Not all D1. D2 NAIA, you know, maybe you've been involved at a semi-pro club, or you're playing for your county, that type of level. NJCAA, because it's more based on academics, in terms of your academics aren't quite at the level to go to a 4-year school. As you can imagine, the actual varied ability across that, the athletes that leave community colleges might be going D1, D2 or NAIA. So hopefully that just gives you some insight there. Again, when I went into this experience, I was getting emails off universities. I didn't know which ones were good, which ones weren't. But what I'm showing you here is we work with top universities across all divisions. So NCAA, D1, D2, NAIA, NJCAA. We work with universities across all states as well. So Feel free to Google or look on our uni database and look up these universities. But these are all universities that we've placed athletes at, and happy to put you in touch with any athletes that have been at those schools. Okay, so talking of some success stories, I won't go into too much detail, but here are some prime examples of athletes. We've already talked about Ellie, so I'll focus on Matt. They've done incredibly well from an academic and athletic standpoint and really made the most of their experience out in America. So I'll just talk about Matt. So from a men's soccer perspective, here's a guy who came to us and trialled with us back in 2015, 16. Yeah, he had a lot of raw potential, a lot of pace, and you could tell that he had ability, but obviously not enough to be offered a scholarship by Colchester United. He went out to West Virginia Wesleyan, who is obviously in West Virginia, is an NCAA D2 program on a full scholarship. So $40,000 a year, all paid for. Happy days. He could have stayed there for all 4 years, graduated completely debt-free. But for Matt, he was doing that well that he thought, you know what, I've got an opportunity to go professional at the end of this. But to showcase how well he was doing, like in 2018, he got 14 goals in 12 games playing as a winger or as a wide forward. He then also played in the summer league. So for those of you that are looking potentially to go pro on men's or women's soccer, you can play in the summer. You just get your basically housing and food covered, but basically you need to be invited to it. So as you can imagine, it's only the best college players in the country. Matt did that for 2 years, did really well. And then, year 3, he decided, you know what, he contacted me and said, Liam, I think I do want to give it a shot of going pro. Can you help me move to a school that's going to give me that exposure? So last year we transferred him to Missouri State. Feel free to look them up online. They are top 10 in the country, Division 1 men's soccer program. In fact, they played 18, won 18 during last season, and Matt scored 18 goals within that. So as you can imagine, he definitely lived up to his expectation. Or in fact, actually, as you look at the stat there, including the scrimmages, he got 20 goals and 4 assists in 20 games. He ended up getting voted into the All-American first team for the entire country and successfully got drafted into Major League Soccer with Minnesota United. Now, obviously, amazing success story. The unfortunate consequence of COVID is that Minnesota have decided to waiver and postpone their drafts from this year. So Matt will be looking to go out next year as a pro. But again, here's a guy who wasn't good enough to get into Colchester. He's developed as a player. He's graduated with almost a perfect, I always hold that against him. He hasn't quite got perfect A's, but he graduated with a top economics degree this year. And whether he does go on to play in Major League Soccer and be a pro, he's had that experience and given himself the best opportunity, and also got himself a degree that will set him up for life. So great success story there for us. Ellie, we've already talked about. Ellie's actually now studying for a master's degree as well as helping us head up our women's soccer. So someone who's been able to really excel both with her football and also with her academics too. And if any of you women's soccer players who haven't already spoken to Ellie want to have a chat with her, just let us know, and happy to put you in touch. You will be happy to know, as we reach the 1.5 hour mark, I have covered the process. I have covered kind of the background story about me and also us as a company. I'm just going to quickly run through our FAQs and really appreciate all of you for sticking with it, particularly on a Sunday night. I know there's I think Arsenal are playing as well shortly, so I will not take up too much of your time. But are you eligible? Yes, we know that, otherwise you wouldn't have been invited. Highlight videos we've already talked about as well, which we'll take care of. You can take a gap year. I did that myself. So if you are thinking, given everything that's going on right now and the fact that they're postponed the season and extended it to spring, and you finish next year your education, you could take 12 months out and look to go the following year. I mean, I did that basically because I left it too late to go out the year before, because I didn't realize how early you have to start the process. But for some of you, you might actually look to go out next year. If you don't get the offers or quite what you're looking for, you could potentially look to go out the year after as well. We've talked about the SAT and ACT enough. What can you study? So a lot of people think, because I'm going out on a football scholarship, I need to do a sports related degree. No, as long as the university that you're looking to go to offers that degree, you can study it. So we've got athletes in America on English, maths, business, science, architecture, engineering, whatever you want to study, that is up to you. let me go to the next one. Ideal time to apply is actually a year and a half to 2 years in advance. As I said, I left it too late and it meant I had to take a gap year. And I get that if you're listening to this right now and you're 15, 16, you're thinking, geez, I don't really know what I want to do yet. That's fine. As long as you kind of understand how this process works, that's great. But particularly with the women's soccer side, we find that a lot of athletes realize even earlier they want to go out to America. And I didn't know anyone who'd gone out to the States, but more and more, I'm sure a lot of you already know athletes that have gone out to America. So it's not unusual for a year and a half or 2 years in advance to know, I definitely want to do this. Now, the benefits of starting the process once you decide you do want to do it is, A, you get more service out of us, so we can get more footage, we can promote you more, we can speak to more schools. The whole process is, as you can imagine, a lot less stressful, but also there's more scholarships available. As you can imagine, if you were looking to go out next year and you signed right before Christmas, maybe over half the scholarships that are available for next year have already been committed to other players. So the earlier you sign, that's obviously a major benefit to it as well. What determines how much scholarship you get? It varies, and every school's slightly different. So going back to my situation was I had 50% of my scholarship paid for because I was an international student, just because they wanted more internationals, and 50% because of my football. So actually my academics didn't really come into it as much at all. As long as I had the minimum SAT and enough to be eligible to play, that's all my coach cared about. We've got other athletes who get scholarship based on their BTEC. We've got other athletes that get based on their overall grade point average. Some can be the SAT, ACT. As you can imagine, there's various different amounts. So unfortunately, there's no formula to say, these are your grades, this is your ability, this is what scholarship you'll get. Every school is slightly different. What other costs can you expect to incur? So beyond obviously our service fee, you've got entrance exams. So if you do the SAT, you can sit it as many times as you want, although I'm sure for you athletes, you probably only want to sit it once and get it right. That's going to be £100. Eligibility centres. So if you're looking to go to a 4-year school, NCAA, NAIA, you would need to get cleared by the eligibility centre. So if you go into an NAIA school, for example, it would cost you £115 to get cleared. Flights, obviously depends how often you want to come back. Most of our athletes would come back at Christmas. Obviously, family will want to see you. Some of them come back in the summer. Some of them don't and look to stay out. And for those of you that don't know, as I said at the beginning, football is typically a full sport. So you would go out in August. School would start in September as well as season. That would take you through to November. School would finish around December with your final exams. Come home for Christmas, that's one semester done. Go back out in January. You're out of season technically, so you're still playing friendlies every week and training every day, but it's not as intense. So you therefore might take more classes, focus on your academics. That would take you through till May, and then that's year one done. You've then got June and July off. So I was missing home year one, so I came back and worked a little bit, but all my mates were either at work or at uni, and the weather was terrible. So for the other 3 years, I decided to stay out there, be in the sun in Chicago. My family came and saw me. I worked in the gym, so saved up a bit of money. So for me, and I took summer classes. So that worked really well for me as well. And then obviously for a 5-year visa, it's going to cost you around £350, £400. It is ridiculous, but unfortunately, they can charge it because they know that you need it, but it's a one-time fee. On a more positive note, you can work under an F1 student visa. So I used to earn about $8,000 a year, which was really lucky, which was great because that covered all my costs of food, tuition and housing. That was as a teaching assistant. I worked in the gym and I helped my coach. Over 90% of our athletes do work while they're out there. And because you're there on a student visa and they realise that you can't just get a job off campus, you normally do get first dibs on a job on campus. So if you're willing to work, there's ways to make money. It might be as little as $3,000 a year, but if that covers all of your flights and your social and your food, then happy days, it's really worth doing. If you've got British accent or an Irish accent, you could potentially pick up bar work when you're over 21 as well, because they do love the accent. And there are opportunities to make money cash in hand. So I used to do football coaching as well. So there are ways to make money while you're out there. What is next? So as you can imagine, we are currently recruiting for 2021, hence the trial games next week. We will stop recruitment for 2021 kind of post these trial games and before Christmas, because as I said, and hopefully what you'll have seen from this presentation tonight is there's a lot that needs to get done between then. a major positive about the COVID restrictions is that the entrance exam has been waived by most schools. So that takes one milestone out of that for you. And also recruiting for 2022 and even 2023 now as well. You've already done the application. You've already, signed up for our trial event. So that's great. So kind of the next steps beyond that are choosing your package. And then obviously if you're offered a place on the program. So if we haven't seen you play, as I said, FIC players, we're going to review your footage tomorrow. If not, you're coming to the trial Tuesday, then great, we'll see you firsthand. Or you're coming to the women's trial on Friday, we'll see you firsthand. So after the trial, obviously we'll have more player meetings, but we then review all the video footage as a team, and then we make those contractual offers out to the 25 or however many places for 2021, 2022. And then the process starts super quick from then, as you can imagine, particularly if you're looking to go 2021, is we need to get video footage highlights finalized ASAP, and then the process can start super quick. Okay. I shall stop sharing my screen. Hopefully that will come out. I shall, as I said at the beginning, I think we've had some questions come in, so that's really great. So what I shall look to do is anyone who wants to ask a question over, I don't want to unmute everyone just because I've learned from that mistake before, because it's carnage in terms of the interference. But if you've got a question that you want to ask on it, I can unmute you, so no problem at all. But we have had some questions come in, so really appreciate that. So let me just answer those. So the first one we've got is, if you are successful, how many games are there typically in a year? In a usual year for men's and women's soccer, we would hold a trial, if not every month, every 2 months, so bi-monthly. And obviously they're throughout the country. So in a usual year, the ones that got cancelled, it would be Sheffield, Liverpool, Manchester, London, Suffolk, Norfolk, Dublin. If you fancy a holiday, Dubai, and also one in America. So we want to give you as many opportunities as possible to showcase your skills. As I said, we've got this trial on Friday, and given everything with COVID, if you can make it to that one, we'd obviously encourage you to, because like with the Sheffield one, if the following one, the next month, is in an area like Sheffield that goes into tier 3, it might be that it's cancelled, or your games aren't getting filmed, or we're unable to come and film you before then. So if you are able to attend any of our trial events, please do. Something that I didn't mention on the presentation is we also do a showcase game every year. Now, the difference between a trial and a showcase is that it's typically the week leading up to Christmas, and a lot of assistant coaches who deal with recruitment at soccer programs, they are typically from the UK. So, for example, about a third of our athletes, and mums on the call, cover your ears, because about a third of our athletes, once they've graduated, do stay out in America, either through sponsorship, getting a job, or marry an American, or becoming a coach. Is about a quarter of those do go on to do their master's degree and become assistant coaches. So therefore, there's a lot of UK coaches in America who come home for Christmas, and then obviously it's the perfect opportunity for them to come to one of our trials and actually see all of our athletes play in person. So last year for the men's side, we did one at Sudbury against Colchester United under-18s. We had about 40 American coaches there in person. We also streamed the game online as well. It can be great exposure for our athletes. In fact, I think 4 players on the day were seen in person by coaches, and by the end of the day had committed to those schools on scholarship. So unbelievable opportunity. And even if you don't end up committing to a school or a coach that's there, it's a great opportunity just to speak to coaches firsthand. So after the game, we hold up like a mini university fair where there'd be those 40 coaches at tables around, and you can just go and talk to them. So you might want to talk to a D1, D2, D3, NAIA, NJCAA coach and just learn more about their schools, which is obviously great to do in person. Unfortunately, although it's still going ahead, I don't expect that we'll get those numbers this Christmas just due to travel restrictions. So hopefully that answered your question. There's a lot of opportunity to play at one of our trial events. And also, particularly with video footage nowadays, it seems that more and more players are getting filmed anyway. All of our partners work with VO, so they're able to get their games filmed as well. So any footage that you've got that you haven't shared with us already, please do. But yeah, the trial events are obviously brilliant to meet in person. I mean, this is great, but it's great to meet in person, have one-to-one chats, see them play in person, and obviously deliver this in person would be my preference as well. Okay, so we've got another question here about the trial game. Do you get sent the footage? Yes, so within probably 48 hours, if not within the week of the trial, we'll look to upload that to YouTube and we can share that with you. Even if you decide that you don't want to go ahead with the opportunity of going out to America on a scholarship, but you want a highlight video created, we can do that for you as well. For those who are unsigned athletes, it would have a small watermark on the footage, but for our signed athletes, that would be unwatermarked. And obviously key for us when making our highlight videos as well. Cool, so those two questions answered. Again, we're well over an hour and a half now, so I really appreciate that. Hopefully I haven't bored you too much, and hopefully you've got some out of that. Encourage anyone who's got any last minute questions to ask. If you feel like you've had enough for one night, I also understand it can be an information overload. I get it. When I went into this process, I literally thought it was going to be simplistic as send my video out, get offered a big offer based on me being good at football, go out to America. As you can see, there's a lot more that goes into that. There's a lot more universities probably than people think. And it's just so important to, end up at the right school for you as well. Just checking if we've got any more coming in. I'm taking that I've absolutely smashed it and answered everything that you need to know, or that maybe you just need some time to think of questions. I'll take it as the first one. But in all seriousness, just want to recap by saying a huge thank you to all of you for joining us. Really excited to seeing you all on Tuesday and Friday. Again, massive apologies for those of you that were planning on coming to our trial event in Sheffield tomorrow. Believe me, we tried as hard as we could to make it work, but first and foremost, the most important thing about any of our trial events is putting the safety of our players and guests at the forefront for that. But again, don't worry, because you can share video footage with us today or tomorrow, which we can review and give you a decision on that anyway. And if not, we will be looking to hold it next month as well. Just trying to think a quick recap if I've missed anything myself, but we've just had one more question. Okay, fees. That is a good question. So for those of you that haven't already been sent the deck or been on our website, I talked about two packages tonight. Our Premier Athlete package, which is offered out to 25 male, 25 female soccer players each year. We take a standard fee of £2,250, which is a one-time fee that can be paid in instalments. Worth mentioning that if you're listening to this and you play at one of our partner clubs, so that's Football Industry College that I mentioned, Sudbury, EDSV, Felixstowe, for example, you would get a slight discount on those rates as part of our agreement. In terms of that fee, we realise it's a significant investment in our services, but hopefully, again, what you'll have got from today is, an investment of £2,250. But if we're able to get your son or daughter a scholarship, that's in excess of 20, 30, 40,000 over 4 years, up to 250,000 over 4 years total, that's what it is. It's an investment in that. And yes, there's other companies out there that do what we do, but hopefully learning from my own poor experience was that I paid cheap on the services, and my learning experience was I got what I invested, which wasn't a lot. And again, hopefully what you'd have got from today is that we're so valuable with our fee in that the personal service that we're able to offer. As you can imagine, there are some companies out there that do still sign 300 athletes a year. My question would be, what level of personal support am I going to get for that? If you looked at any football agent, if I was a top Premier League player and I had a football agent and I know he's representing another 200 players as well, where's their interest really lying? Whereas, we're only promoting 25 male or 25 female players to thousands of schools. Obviously, we're going to be able to get good offers for them because that's our main focus for that year as well. Now, the other package, which I touched on, was the online package, where for those that we don't make an offer to join our Premier Athlete package, you could still sign up to get access to the university database and still have your profile created, which coaches can access. And for that, it's only $9.99 a month. And that's, you can cancel it whenever you want as well. So if you're a Premier Athlete, you get access to all that as part of your package anyway. So hopefully that answered that question. It's 6:29, so I shall stay here till 6:30 in case there's any last questions on there. But as I said, I realise we've covered a lot of content tonight. Really appreciate your time. Again, tomorrow I'm available all day. So we've got that Calendly invite that you'd have got via email. If you want 10, 15, half an hour, or even an hour with me or one of my colleagues to discuss specifics, feel free. I get that you guys do have jobs as well, but you might be working from home or have the time to have a chat with us. Please do send me an invite, or even if you want to do it another evening, do let me know as well. At that stage, I shall wrap it up. But again, thanks again for your time, and look forward to speaking to you either tomorrow, Tuesday, or Friday, or in the upcoming weeks. Take care and stay safe. Thanks, everyone.